Welcome back, Doug Padgett Radio. Good Sunday morning, Sunday, November 29th edition of the show. Glad to have you all aboard. If you didn't know, this is a big religious week, not just because of Thanksgiving last Thursday. No, it's religious in other ways. For the Muslim community, it's the start of Hajj. I tried to have a couple of imams or a Sikh in to tell us a little bit about what's going on with Hajj and how that works and all about it. And we're going to try to get that set up here in the next couple of weeks because I would love to learn more about that little pilgrimage. But for those of you who follow in the Christian tradition, this is the start of Advent. Bet you didn't know that, Grover. Yeah, see, here's the deal. Here's one of the issues, folks. If you're into religious stuff, if you're into Christianity, you're into the church structure, you're into the church calendar, and particularly into a certain stream of that, then you know that this is the season of Advent. Now, it's not the most ideal word, frankly, for this holiday season. It basically means the weeks in preparation for Christmas. Okay, that's what Advent is. So weeks in preparation for Christmas, and Advent means like the dawning of something. So normally when that word Advent is used, it means that something is coming. So the advent of the fax machine, the advent of the polio vaccine, something like that. It's the coming, the dawning of something. So in the Christian calendar, originated by official church structures, 1500, almost 1900 years ago, the season of Christmas was established, and it has a very sordid history. We'll talk about this in coming weeks about how we got there, and it really was a Nordic pagan festival of the dawning of light. It's a Christmas, or it's a winter solstice kind of festival. Well, when Christianity expanded into areas where there was this Nordic light dawning winter festival going on, many of the religious people wanted to adopt that for their own purposes and to tell their own Christian story. So Christmas was celebrated in conjunction with that Nordic festival. That's why Christmas is when it is, at the end of December. It's not as if it's following a historic pattern that Jesus was probably born on December 25th. No, there are people who make all kinds of speculations about this. Nobody really knows when Jesus was born, but if any time, most people who know this kind of stuff would suggest in April, where normally Easter is celebrated. Yeah, Jesus is probably born in April, but not being the point of it, the celebration of the Christ Mass, Christmas, the Christ Mass, was the celebration of the Catholic Mass that celebrated the coming of the Christ. So that celebration was put in the cultural time of the winter solstice. Now that brings up a whole set of things about people who worry that somehow the cultural situation of our country and gift giving and buying and family and food and all that is somehow hijacking Christmas, right? I mean, it strikes a fellow a little funny when you know the history of it to know that Christmas is celebrated by Christians at the time of the winter solstice because it fit the cultural happening of the day. So if anyone was hijacking Christmas, Christmas hijacked the Nordic festival to begin with. But it was the right time, right? Because things were dark and then they were getting light. So if you're going to tell the story about salvation coming to the world through Jesus, then you're going to tell that during the time when it's getting lighter, and that's the perfect time. But it does make one wonder about all this worrying and all this frolicking and all this arguing about who's doing the hijacking. So, the pagans are often the ones, who still will organize their religious life around these religious festivals, or these the winter solstice and so on. They're the ones who would say, you religious people are the ones doing the hijacking, to tell you the truth. If you want to talk about who's climbing aboard somebody else's holiday, that's you folks doing that. But Advent is the Christian story that tells the long arc of the sending of the Christ child, right? So that's what Advent is about. So it takes a number of weeks in preparation. So if you go to churches in the next couple of weeks, you're going to see people lighting a series of Advent candles. They will light a series of them around a wreath, normally, or around a circle, and then finally on Christmas Day, they will light the center candle, and it's the Christ candle, and then you get this whole lighted display, right? So that's the story of Advent. Well, one of the issues that this radio commentator on religious radio, that's not quite right, has with this whole Advent thing is not just that we don't always tell the full story of how Advent, or how Christmas was placed when it was and why we have Advent the way that we do, but more importantly, I think that in Christianity, we follow this series of the church calendar, this liturgy of the church calendar, and this particular litany of what celebrations you're going to have at what time and when you're going to have them. And I think what it does is it keeps Christianity stuck in this feedback loop. You can't seem to get out of it. Now, those of my friends who will be saying to me regularly today and the rest of the next 5 weeks while I gripe and grumble and grouse about the being stuck in the Advent story, that they will remind me that people and traditions and religion and culture all need repetition. They need routines. They need things to be done once and twice and over and over. And I don't disagree with that. I'm all about that. I gotcha. I'm hearing you. I think that's true. But what happens is we get stuck in this, tell the story of the birth of Jesus, tell the story of some of the things that Jesus does, tell the story of the death of Jesus at Easter, and then you have the common period for about 6 months, and then you jump back into it. And we just keep repeating the same story. What would be better, in my estimation, is if simultaneous to these yearly cycles, if we also had, say, a 7-year cycle. The nation of Israel would have these 7-year cycles. So you would tell a story long over 7 years. In fact, there would be 7 years and then 7 sets of 7 years. There would be 49 years. And then on the 50th year in Jewish tradition, you would then have the year of Jubilee, the year of celebration. All debts are set free. All prisoners are set free. Everything resets. Everything rearranges. Like once a generation, everything goes back to normal. If we were telling a long arc story like that, then these repetitions of these holiday seasons could fit. But without that longer story, we end up just getting into this little circle of liturgy and this little circle of dates and this little circle of holidays, celebrations, and it just repeats over and over and over until people finally end up saying, oh my goodness, is it Christmas already? And then this story has nothing to do with anything, and people who know that it's Advent go, oh, great, it's Advent, and you move on. But for somebody who's trying to argue that Christianity ought to be a much more positive, inclusive, and beneficial belief system in the world, we need a better set of traditions. The fact that 15, 17, some would even want to argue 1900 years ago, there was the establishment of this kind of pattern of Christianity, my only question would be, how's that working for us, as Dr. Phil would say? How is that going? Is it really working? Do we really feel like this sort of storyline of Christianity, repeating pattern every year, now back into Advent again, and now we'll spend 5 weeks telling the Advent story? Is it really sending us anywhere? Is it really propelling? Is it really sending us down the road? So if you have some thoughts about that, I'd love to have your input. Welcome to call in on the studio line, 952-946-6205. We're going to be back with Carla Barnhill, Mommy Revolution lady. Talk a little bit about this with Carla too, because she's into the kids and how you teach these traditions to the little ones in our communities. This is Doug Padgett Radio, religious radio that's not quite right, on AM 950 in the Twin Cities and on the internet around the world at DougPadgettRadio.com.